Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one's entitled Planet X has destroyed the sun and is now destroying the Earth. Why? Now, as I have written in many previous articles, the sun has gone dark, and you may look at article 500 entitled The Sun is No Longer Shining Review. And the Earth is increasingly weak. One of the signs that the Earth is increasingly weak and thus dying is that it is producing less and less water. But how do these objects cause solar system objects to die? Well, they absorb energy, but there is so much gravitational energy in living celestial objects that even with the great loss through the absorption by Planet X system stellar cores, there should be enough for matter creation to continue for millions of years, and thus for the objects to continue living for millions of years. However, the sun has now lost its ability to emit light after only a few thousand years, and has thus essentially died. The reason for this has to do with electrons. Planet X system electrons are frozen in a low gravitational energy state and cannot absorb gravitational energy and thus transport gravitational energy from the core to the outer layers of celestial objects. Planet X system stellar cores and debris absorb electrons from solar system objects and leave their frozen electrons behind. And here you can see some of these stellar cores. Some are very large. This one turned out to be 7 times larger than the sun. And you can see that it's very close to the sun because some of this plasma coming off the sun is actually in front of the object. You can see it there. So then we can do a size comparison. It turned out to be 7 times larger than the sun. This is the core of what was once a star. So the star itself would have been much, much larger than this as well. Here's another one about the same size as the sun, another one here about the same size as the sun. They provoke CMEs and they come in as comets. You can see a comet there. You may look at article 367 entitled Planet X coming in as comets and affecting the Earth. Electrons are constantly being repelled from the core up towards the surface of the Earth, where they are carried by water molecules in the gaseous phase and in the Earth's atmosphere to high altitudes. As these electrons encounter matter in the atmosphere, they hop onto these atoms and transfer their energy as well as release excess energy in the form of photons. This electron-mediated energy transfer to clouds and nitrogen molecules, which give rise to the blue sky, is usually initiated by visible light photons in the atmosphere, which is why we usually only see light coming from clouds during the day, although it sometimes happens that you get it at night too. But once initiated by photons, the energy is transferred via electrons that come from the Earth's core. So in the Earth, the atmosphere, the water molecules act a lot like the rubber belt in a Van de Graaff generator. So that basically the electrons are being carried up to the cloud, which is Planet X water. And the electrons will always move to the highest elevation possible because they are repelled by the Earth's core. And this is the basis of static electricity. Static electricity is Earth electrons being repelled away from the core. And you may look at Article 603 entitled Planet X Water and the Natural Van de Graaff Generator for more details on that. In the sun, electrons are also carried and absorbed by material in the sun's atmosphere, which allows the sun to emit light. Now, once these electrons deposit their energy in atoms within the atmosphere by becoming a part of these atoms, they will eventually be replaced by other electrons that have more recently departed from the surface and will then return back to the surface in a much lower energy state than when they left the surface. They will then move back down toward the core to be replenished. The replenishment occurs through the process that is known as Peter decay. Low gravitational energy electrons returning to the core enter the nuclei of particles in the core and combine with protons to form neutrons, whilst at the same time neutrons in these same nuclei are releasing electrons with a large amount of gravitational energy inside them. Thus electrons are renewed by combining with protons, resulting in neutrons. This allows the gravitational energy in the proton to flow across to the electron so that both end up with the same amount of gravitational energy, and thus the electron is replenished. But once the electron receives the energy, it will immediately be repelled by the proton through the charge separation part of the gravitational interaction, and will thus leave the neutron, which will thus turn back into a proton. And this is illustrated here in these two diagrams. This is the electrostatic interaction, which always causes two protons to repel and a proton and an electron to attract. The gravitational interaction always opposes it, so it's the opposite. The proton and the electron repel each other. This is the charge separation part of the gravitational interaction, and this is what causes electrons to always be repelled away from the core towards the surface of the Earth, and from the surface of the Earth up into the atmosphere. And for more details on this, you may look at Book 3 entitled Planet X Reveal Gravity and Light. But Planet X electrons, as I said, are in a frozen energy state. And I showed that in the previous article, Article 616, and cannot absorb gravitational energy. So they combine with a proton, which turns into a neutron, and do not then separate from the neutron, so that the energy within the neutron is now frozen or inaccessible. Thus, slowly over the course of time, energy in the core becomes inaccessible, and the supply of electrons coming from the core drops. The emission of light by the sun's atmosphere is dependent on these electrons. These electrons release their gravitational energy when absorbed by the ions in the sun's atmosphere. This energy is in the form of photons, and these photons are the light that the sun emits. So without electrons, there is no light emission, and the sun goes dark. The inaccessible gravitational energy in the matter in the core also results in the energy available for matter creation to decline. So the production of water declines, and on Earth the water is extremely important for carrying electrons into the atmosphere. Planet X water on the surface can do it, but it needs a much higher temperature to go into the gaseous phase. So the humidity severely declines in cold or winter weather. You may look at Article 614 for more details on that. The locked-in gravitational energy inside the neutrons, which have Planet X electrons in them, will cause the electrons that are still being released to not get to as high an altitude as before, which results in the corona, i.e. the part of the sun's atmosphere that is still able to emit light, to decrease in size. This would have eventually caused the sun to emit no visible light, but only ultraviolet light, X-ray, and gamma rays as the electron levels sink below the sun's surface. And since the atmosphere is denser closer to the surface, the sun would go through a short amount of time when it would only have emitted X-rays and gamma rays, and then only gamma rays before emitting no radiation whatsoever, but at a much more intense level than before. So when it was at the level that it was only emitting X-rays, it would have emitted much more X-rays than it did before this the level started sinking. And these diagrams show what has happened to the sun's corona, how it declined over a period of 7 years. And these images are much older, almost likely much older than the timestamps would suggest. Well, they have to be, because the sun is no longer shining, and was actually no longer shining by 1998. And these images are from 2011, 2017. And what happened was these images are most likely from 20 or 30 years ago, and the timestamps were changed, and these images have been shown to us as more current images. And you may look at Article 500 entitled The Sun's No Longer Shining Review for more details on that. So these images are in ultraviolet light. So this shows from where in the sun's atmosphere ultraviolet light was being emitted. Visible light will be emitted from much lower altitudes. So this illustrates how the sun's electron energy levels would work. So you would have visible light from this layer here. Ultraviolet light would be emitted from here, because that's how far ultraviolet electrons would get up to, and X-ray electrons even higher. And then as the sun dies, as it loses, as its gravitational energy is locked away, it can no longer push electrons as far up as it once did. So these levels will decline and move down towards the surface. And the atmosphere is denser closer to the surface. So that means that more, if this now turns into an ultraviolet electron level, more ultraviolet light will be emitted from that level because of the matter being denser than it did from the higher altitude. And this would most likely happen for a short amount of time, and then the sun would go completely dark, emitting no radiation whatsoever. So with the sun no longer being able to supply Planet X system stellar cores with electrons, it is likely that more and more, and also larger objects, will come to Earth for its supply of electrons, which will most likely then cause the Earth to go through cataclysmic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And the fact that the Earth is having unprecedented amounts of Planet X debris in the form of rain, hail, and snow indicates that indeed more and more Planet X objects are coming to Earth with their debris fields and causing weather chaos. So in conclusion, Planet X system stellar cores have caused the sun to die. In other words, to lose the ability to emit light in a comparatively short time of a few thousand years, because Planet X electrons are in a frozen energy state and thus cannot absorb gravitational energy and transport it to the outer layers of the sun, like solar electrons. The Earth is also quickly declining, as evidenced by current low humidity levels in winter conditions. In addition, as more of these objects come to Earth for its supply of electrons, it gives rise to more and more Planet X debris entering the Earth's atmosphere, and thus in increasingly chaotic weather on Earth. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.